Hello again, Keith Hayes with you for a final thrust through to 11 o'clock this morning. And right now it is 10:19. The date is the 22nd, Monday the 22nd of May. And the temperature is sitting at 14 degrees. It actually dropped just a little. It was sitting at 15 a little while ago. But it's a pleasant day out there, scattered sunny spells, and not a stiff breeze by any means. In fact, I can wear the old hat without it going tumbling down the high street. We've had on this morning, we've had Richard Barton as a barrister, and a good one at that, giving us some insight into what happens in the Crown Court and what you must be careful about with the law and what you can get away with. We've had a review of the papers and a bloody good rant from me about local politics. And now what we're going to do is we're going to settle down, because the nature of this town has changed remarkably over the last little while. We've got a lot of people who are coming in because it is a nice place to settle. It was a nice place to settle. It's beginning to fray a little at the edges. No, it's not. It's beginning to fray a lot at the edges. It's about time that some of the worthies in this place have started to get their act together. And start to make serious efforts to put things right. We're not going to get anything from our political lot. Perhaps we've got to take things into our own hands and start to think of some initiatives to make this town exciting again and vibrant and humming, because it's far from that. Empty shops on the high street. Not that many people around. Yes, the small community groups are still very active. There is no real concerted effort to say to the world, hey, we are Lewes. Take us on. Be part of us. Follow us. Get excited with us. It's not in their vocabulary. I don't think that way. They're all busy with their committees and silly nonsense. We've already lost control, and I've waged a campaign saying, give us back our town. Bring back the administration of Lewes District back into Lewes. Those senior political figures that I know and chat to tell me the probability is that that will never happen now. That doesn't mean to say that we've got to stop trying, because the way that it is at the moment is there's no leadership, there's no core, there's no banner to follow. And that's what we've got to get back. We need a few statesmen, not politicians. A few people to stand up and be counted, to take things forward. And actually, if they're not elected, the happier we'll be, because our elected people do sweep. Right. So those people who are new to Lewes, we're going to be showing our documentary, The Bloody Past of a Tiny Town, over the next couple of weeks or so. And it might give you an insight into what we are all about, and some of the things that have made us famous in the past, because this really is the home of democracy. It started here with the Battle of Lewes, and it was carried on by the Rights of Man and Tom Paine. We should be proud, and we should be making the most of this, and we're not. Anyway, here you go.
I'm Keith Hayes, and you'll be sick and tired of my face by the time this series ends, but I hope you'll bear with me as I shuffle through the streets of this lovely town, pop in and out of its pubs, and tell you a story of its bloody past. In Saxon times, it was known as Lewes. The modern term for toilet might have come from it, I suppose. But the town became respectable and is now known as Lewes. Lewes, not Lewes. But its original name does come from Saxon times. And this pretty little town in East Sussex, nicely tucked under the shelter of the South Downs, has had this high street for longer than written records go back. Pretty normal sort of UK high street, really. Typical shops and stores each side of it. Looks just like High Street UK. High Street UK, from John O'Groats to Land's End, have all got a history. But this little stretch of road has a violent and bloody history. And that history reflects much of the history of the country itself. A pint pulled from a tap is the tipple of most Englishmen, I suspect. They sure tippled in Lewes in the past. This pub goes back to 1742. There's a list of the landlords to prove it. Today, sitting on the high street, it's one of the 16 pubs in a town of 16,000. 150 years ago, there were 63 pubs in Lewes and 18 breweries. And in those days, there were only 9,000 people. Wow, what a tall tale. Yes, but true. And over the next few programmes, I'm going to take a closer look at some of the bloodier and more sensational events that have occurred on this seemingly normal high street. But right now, I'm just going to paint a general picture of this tiny English town, before I get to the bloody and the exotic. The high street is dominated by a Norman castle. One of the oldest Norman castles in the country. It was built not long after the invasion of 1066. It housed the Norman garrison, who ensured the people living inside its walls were kept safe. Indeed, Lewes was a walled town, and there is brick-by-brick evidence of the 4 gates that gave entry to the town.
By the way, Lewes isn't a corruption of Lew. It's the Saxon word for a hill. And if you thought that Lewes had lots of pubs, it has far more hilly roads. Far more even than the rest of the country, I think.
The modern-day Lewes is well used by its people. Lots of shops, markets, and even tea rooms. It also has a lot of parades. At the end of the school year, a ceremony takes place called patina. All year long, pupils design and build exotic costumes ready to parade down the high street.
Raphael, I walked onto the high street in Lewes a couple of years ago to be greeted with a lot of children running around in funny costumes. What on earth is that all about?
It's called Moving on Parade, and it's something we started 16 years ago. It started from a wish of parents to bring more art into schools because they see how much schools struggle demands of the government, and they wanted to support the school in that. So we started something called Patina, which is Parents and Teachers in the Arts.
All right.
Moving on Parade celebrates the transition from primary to secondary education of all the children in Lewes District Council.
Very colourful costumes. How do you decide what the costumes are? You're the artistic director, so you better give me a good answer on this.
So every year we have a theme. The theme this year is Wonders of Our World. Last year we asked the community to suggest different artists that they would like to see on the parade, and loads of suggestions came in, and we shortlisted the huge list into 16 schools, which was the amount of schools that took part last year. We had Frida Kahlo, and we had Picasso, and we had Van Gogh, and we have Giacometti, and we had Andy Warhol. So they doing illustrations and designs, and then the patina artists take all the children's idea and adapt it into a practical design that the children are actually able to make in a couple of days. We invite about 8 or 10 people from every school to come and learn the skills of the carnival costume, and they start to make the big make that the school going to carry. And after that, the patina artists going into the school and work with the children on their individual costumes. We're trying to really do it as a enjoyment, getting people together. They're all gonna meet in the secondary school later on. We're trying that they'll meet each other beforehand as well. So we're doing events all year round for the benefit of the whole community, not just for the year sixes.
You do other things. You said you go to the schools. What do you do in the schools?
So our next event is on the 22nd of April. It's called Dance Your Socks Off. And because the theme this year is Wonders of Our World, we thought it'll be really fun to have an evening of teaching flamenco, bhangra, and the sirtaki with world food. We're going to have sushi, we're going to have international cocktails, we're going to have professional dance callers who are going to teach the dance, and it's going to be a really fun event, and that's for children as well.
See, cocktails. I told you Lewes is a drinking town.
Yeah, we're pretty good at cocktails. Growing every year, so we making contact with our twin towns. We're making contact with Lewes in America. There's a group of them artists from Lewes in America coming to Lewes in June. We made contact with them, and what we would really like is to use this format in other places, because Lewes is the only place that we know of who celebrates their moving on from primary to secondary schools, and it's people that hear about it, they are impressed, and it will be really nice for other people, other children in other communities to do the same.
Yeah, I did realise it was unique to Lewes and a very unusual operation. Well, how do the children react to it? I mean, generally speaking, do you get great support from the kids?
Yes, we do, and because it's been going for so many years, it becomes a part of the cultural calendar of the town. So young children know that when they get to year 6, they'll do the moving on parade, and all the siblings did it, and they've seen the rest of the older ones doing it. So it's kind of something that they look forward to.
I'm known for wearing strange costumes. As you can see, my hats are still there in this episode, so I don't think I should be marching, but I most certainly will come to the cocktails.
Great.
Raffaella, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
The adults have their turn, and on November the 5th, the biggest Guy Fawkes celebration anywhere in the world takes place. Exotic costumes, burning crosses, effigies stuffed with fireworks. Rousers, that is a banger to you and I, are tossed casually into the street. And almost every citizen of the town, old and young, takes part. There's a bit more to the bonfire celebration, though, than just the gunpowder plot. In 1553, Queen Mary was determined to bring Roman Catholicism back to England. Right here on the High Street, she burned 17 people at the stake who wouldn't convert. The dungeon, where they were held before being so horribly slaughtered, is still here, up these steps, being the last walk the condemned men would take. It was a horrible death. They were put into tar barrels, which were then set alight. Pretty bloody stuff. But we'll leave the High Street for a few minutes. Then we'll bring you more gore, blood and guts.
I think the government stinks. And I think the last government stank. And what's more, I think the government even before that stank. Whether I believe that or not is quite irrelevant. What is important is whether I can say it without being locked up by the King's men. It wasn't always so.
The rights enjoyed in a free democracy started right here. It was here, near to the High Street, that blood was shed in the name of freedom. It was match of the day, the King versus the barons. King Henry III was roundly defeated at the Battle of Lewes, just on the edge of the town. Despite holding the castle, the king's men were put to the sword, and many were massacred in both the huge priory, which stood near the town, and right here in our bloody High Street. Panicking soldiers were easy pickings for the pursuing forces of Simon de Montfort. The Battle of Lewes is said to be the first step towards democracy in this country. That was in 1243.
If you say the Battle of Lewes to most people around this country now, they glance at you with vacant eyes. They don't know what it's about. What was it about?
Well, you're right. Most people here don't know about it. What happened was Simon de Montfort and his barons were arguing with the king and his men about representation in Parliament, whereas the king, the king just had all of his men and a lot of his French relatives in Parliament, and he was taxing the barons very heavily, and all of this money was going to the French relatives or going abroad, and the barons were not very happy about this. So they wanted at least half of the 24 men in Parliament to be elected barons. So, I mean, though it's not very democratic in the sense that we have it today, it's the start of that representation of a view that is not just the king's view on how things should be run. Simon de Montfort got to hear that the king was down at the Priory of St. Pancras, and why he was there was for the Feast of St. Pancras in the middle of May. And of course it was a big feast, and people would come from all over the world, actually, or all over Europe, to the feast. So he needed somewhere as big as the Priory to be able to feed all these people and entertain them for a few days. And that's why he was here. Simon de Montfort was up country in northern Sussex in some of his estates with his men, and he heard that the king was down here, and he sent messengers. He sent bishops of Winchester and London down with money, with £30,000, which is a fortune in those days, to try and negotiate a settlement with the king. The king was a little bit reticent to go into war with Simon de Montfort, because yes, they were brother-in-laws, and he was an old man. They were in their late 50s at the time. Not that that's old now, but it was then. But the king's brother, Richard of Alamein, also called King of the Romans, etc., he wanted war. And of course, Prince Edward, hothead, he definitely wanted war. So they settled, you know, the ransom money was sent back, and the envoys, the bishops, were sent back, and so it was war the next day. They negotiated the Mise of Lewes, most of which was, you know, yes, we took this castle, well, we give you it back, and you give us this, and we'll ransom this man and that man for this man and that kind of thing. But it also set down where the king would say, you know, 24 of the 24, we're going to have 12 elected. barons, so that we're going to have the beginning of a parliamentary election. And Simon de Montfort made the king hand over his seals, which meant that the king had no power. So Simon de Montfort became the de facto king. It changed the king's complete and outright power. And Prince Edward then went on to, as king, ratify the clauses of the Magna Carta and the provisions of Oxford. And those began to change the king's power. And it also meant things like, if a woman died as a widow, her dowry money was hers. It didn't need to be given over to her husband's family and sons and what have
There's
you.
a start of women's rights as well.
There you go.
My goodness
There
me.
you go. The Normans did it for us.
The man who gave the name to the House of Commons, and according to at least one historian, named America the United States, preached his heretical views in the town's pubs.
Here we go again. Pubs in Lewes. You can't get away from them.
There's a tale handed down from Crown landlord to Crown landlord that Tom Paine was barred from drinking in that bar because he harassed and harangued the regulars to the point where they wouldn't drink anymore. They were fed up with Tom preaching the rights of man. So he walked across the street to the coaching inn, the White Hart,
where a more lenient landlord turned a blind eye, or, a more likely, a deaf ear to the ravings of this revolutionary.
It seemed that he used to like to spend his social hours here and his active political discussion times here in volatile discussion with a group which I believe we thought was called the Headstrong Club, because it still meets today and they call it the Headstrong Club today. But I gather from a local historian that it was called the White Hart Dining Club. Oh. And Thomas Paine, up in our sheriff's room, the oak-panelled function room, basically plotted the American Revolution and for a struggle for independence, which resulted in the final Declaration of Independence, an authenticated copy of which we have in the sheriff's room, and he was credited with originating that. And in turn, he dubbed the White Hart Hotel as the cradle of American independence.
He had some remarkable phrases, didn't he? I mean, according to Bill Bryson, he coined the first time the phrase the House of Commons, and also Bryson says that he coined the phrase the United States. So now the White Hart goes down in history as the cradle of independence. It's wonderful. But whoever the landlord was at the time embraced him and said, "Come on in, we love to hear you talk."
It certainly wasn't me. No, you're right. And yes, I think probably as any hotelier, always keen for a little bit of business, and it developed into quite an active dining club, I gather, because they had their volatile political discussions over dinner.
No record of you throwing him out of the hotel?
No, but I have to say that during the times that they have met here recently, we've had some very interesting volatile speakers, lots of celebrities, actors, and I remember Tony Benn's voice drilling through the sheriff's room door. It said, I ought not say too much, but it said that a lot of decisions are made here after the council chambers has closed. So that's interesting. Yeah, I think Lewes has embraced Thomas Paine very well. I'm very proud of him because he lived just up the road in the Bull Inn, and of course it was a very easy little trot. And even after he had imbibed, he wouldn't have far to go.
So our Tom, getting nowhere at home, he worked briefly as a customs officer in this house here, married the boss's daughter in the church here, within the town's walls, then took off to America.
In Lewes, he was ranting. In the colonies, he was making sense.
He preached revolution, and revolution was what he got. The American colonies broke away to form a new country, the United States. There are many more buildings that either face or back onto the high street. Lewes Prison is a few hundred yards up the road. It has held many famous people, including pop star Mick Jagger. Jagger famously talked his way to a prison phone, called the White Hart Hotel, and ordered a takeaway, which was duly delivered. Tucked away behind these buildings was a naval prison. 250 Russian prisoners captured in a naval battle in the Crimea War were incarcerated here in 1854. Life was harsh for the ratings, but the officers roamed the town at will, socializing with the locals and dining at the tables of the high and the mighty in Lewes. 17 of the ratings died while in prison, and a monument to them stands in the graveyard of a local church. This impressive structure was built by Tsar Alexander II, and its upkeep is still paid for by the Russian embassy in London. There are many other events that make the High Street interesting. The days of great circuses parading their animals. The Prince Regent winning a bet, driving a coach and four down the cobbled street. It's a wonder he didn't break his neck. So today I've taken a snapshot look at Lewes High Street. High Street UK. Every high street has a history. And there are thousands of high streets across the country. And this is just one of them. More high street tales tomorrow. Meanwhile, where's that pint?
I'd fill you in a little on the background to this town. That was a sort of a summary in part one. We get a bit more specific as the series goes through, and it's in 8 parts. So each week we will be showing you a new episode of the bloody past of a tiny town, and tune in to us. Now we started this morning with Law and Order, and what I would like to do is to show you, I think, if I can, the no, of course it is never where it is supposed to be. So perhaps I can't. But we did a series in the past in which we called Catch 'em, and it was about the present and the history of crime in this town, and well, anyway, we've got 10 minutes to go. I was going to show you that, but it is time, I think, for me to have another go, and with your connivance, to try and put to flight one of the real evils of our life is Parkinson's. Here we go. Well, a bit of a truncated intro to this morning's. It's Sunday morning, you see. And my fingers are not used to a Sunday environment. I didn't get up until 7 o'clock this morning, but that doesn't mean to say that I'm not getting up at 5 o'clock to continue with Mirador Television from the White Hart Hotel. The reason that I've said that I'm getting up still early is because this is just about Parkinson's. And despite the fact I got Parkinson's, I still get up at 5:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30, and off I trot to do a day's work on television. It's online television, Mirador Television. It comes out of Lewes, and that's where I'm broadcasting from. And it's a gorgeous Sunday morning, a wonderful Sunday morning. And there's a gentleman busy doing the garden outside. The birds are in the heaven. There's a pussycat wandering around, and a gentle breeze. It's a very pleasant day. And I'm going to enjoy it. Despite the fact that I've got Parkinson's, what I do is I tell it to bugger off. And it's not helping me. At the moment, I am shuffling like an old man. And as I think I reported in my last note about Parkinson's, is a good friend looked at me in the eye and said, "Shuffle like an old man. You are an old man." And indeed, I suppose I am. But I refuse to let Parkinson's get me down. And it frightens so many people. But in many ways, one of the things that you can do to fight Parkinson's, if you do have it, is to be positive about it, to tell it that it is not going to affect you. Yes, it stopped me walking, more or less. I shuffle. My back aches. I can't stand for any length of time. And in fact, on Tuesday this week, I'm going to take a receipt of a scooter so I can go and beat up the roads and the lanes and the pavements around about Lewes at all of 8 miles per hour. But that's going to make all the difference to me, and it'll open up a whole new area of possibilities. But that doesn't mean to say that I will lose my positive approach. I will try to walk wherever I can. I will try to perform normal type of life and to keep going and do my television stuff and so on. Sometimes I'm quite funny first thing in the morning because I do lose my train of thought. Parkinson's does that a bit to you. I'm not suffering from dementia. I'm not suffering from even amnesia. I'm not suffering from any of those things. But age and the combination of party does actually take away a bit of your quality of life. I've always prided myself on being fairly articulate, having a reasonable command of the English language. And sometimes it imposes on that. And that really does piss me off. But nonetheless, I still tell it to get lost. A lot of top-notch people have Parkinson's. It's not to be afraid of. We had a little reception for the coronation in the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, and amongst the guests was a friend of mine who's just recently found out that she's got Parkinson's, and it bothered her for the longest time. But she is now beginning to adopt a positive attitude, and she is beginning to say to it, "Hey, you're not going to get me." And that's what I do. I say, "Hey, you're not going to get me." And I'm happy to say that an old colleague, Jeremy Paxman, and some of his other established and well-known people, far better known than me, have started a blog designed to help people who have got Parkinson's. This isn't designed to help anybody, really, other than let me sound off about it. It is not going to get me. I am going to fight it to the bitter end. I'm 83 now. And so how much longer have I got? Who knows? Who knows? I feel sprightly today. I might fall off my scooter tomorrow. No, I'm not going to go and drink drive. But whatever I do, I will maintain my positive attitude. And that positive attitude does depend to some extent upon looking fairly regularly at the advances that are made in Parkinson's research. As I said before, it tends to be lost amongst the appeals for all sorts of other charities and research organizations, particularly cancer, and perhaps that's rightly so, and partly because Parkinson's tends to strike later in life. Not exclusively so. There are some young people who have it, but it does tend to strike later in life, and as a consequence, it doesn't get the same attention that some of the things for children and animals and so on gets. But that doesn't mean to say that we must give in to it. No, indeed, indeed, indeed. We must not give in to it. So this is not an appeal, although by all means send a few bob to Parkinson's. They continue to try to find new ways of beating it. I take about 5 pills, and I hate it. I hate it. Oh dear, dear, dear. And at 5:30 in the morning, taking a pill that you don't like isn't particularly a great thing to do. But nonetheless, what I would like to say to people is, look, understand Parkinson's. I'm lucky. I don't do this. Some people are uncontrollable. I had a friend in London who was like that. It varies on how it hits people, but try to be as understanding as you can, particularly if it's a motor bit that goes. When I shuffle, I have to say to friends, hey, slow down. I can't go as fast as you along the high street. Most of them are pretty good about it. The odd one strides on and leaves me trailing in the wake. But generally speaking, we need to be positive. We need to have a go at this and see if we can actually beat it into the ground, because it's a nasty, 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 vicious disease. And it strikes without you even knowing it. And that's the nasty bit. Anyway, let's end on a nice positive note. We are very much into the broadcasting on a Sunday morning, just about Parkinson's. I'm going to get dressed in a minute. I'm going to go for a pint at lunchtime with a good friend of mine, a political friend, and we tear everything apart and put it back together again and have great fun doing so. So until I decide to get up again and do a nice little rant about Parkinson's, toodle pip. Toodle, toodle, toodle pip. Well, there you go. Let's fight Parkinson's. It, as I've often said, in some ways, it's a disease that tends to hit you later in life, and so it doesn't get the play that some of the other charities do. That's okay too, but there are a few of us, Jeremy Paxman in this country, Michael J. Fox globally, who make very, very active efforts to get support to maintain research and to beat this damn disease, to beat it. And so we should. There we go. It's now 3 minutes. By golly, my voice is going this morning. Actually, that's the Parkinson's again. It affects it. And what I do is I do as much talking as I can. Yatta, 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 yatta. To keep it smooth and so on. And normally, what I'm fighting is a very dry mouth. This morning, it's not a dry mouth, and suddenly it's become a dry throat. So I have to keep on yattering on. I hope you don't mind that as a bit of therapy. But it is now 10:57. 3 minutes. Just as a reminder of what's in the news headlines this morning is that Sulia Braverman, the Home Secretary, is, as they do in Westminster, get their knickers into a twist about things which aren't going to help the rest of us, didn't tell anybody that she got got a ticket for speeding. And her officials, you can't rely upon them either. I mean, civil service has really gone downhill. officials denied it to when people asked, and of course they were lying and telling porkies. So it's now become an issue, and that was the key issue this morning in the headlines. That was the main headline. Personally, and the other one, of course, is we keep on making a fuss about Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield. Why? Heaven only knows. I mean, one of my areas of expertise is television. And to be quite honest with you, they can be replaced and everybody will have forgotten about them in 3 months' time. But the television executives of today are just like a lot of other people in this in our society. They're as daft as I'll get out. They get their knickers into a twist about all the wrong things. We have to put up with it. Well, if those two fought, and if the television executives, with all the things that they've got to tell them who's watching and how many, all the things that I'd love to have, are going to get their knickers into a twist, then we get the television that we deserve. And frankly, there's not much of it that's any good. I'm not talking about movies. I'm not talking about even drama or series. But the day-to-day bread and butter television is as poor now as it's ever been. Very sad. Let's just tweak the tail.
Well done, the energy companies. They're full of bright ideas to help their customers. Now they've made power so expensive that for an average house such as this, you can't afford to heat it. So you don't need appliances such as this. But that means you also don't need a fridge, because you can keep your groceries cool and fresh without it. The house is cold enough. Well done, chaps.
There you go. That's our last little kick of the morning. See you tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8:30, out of the White Hart in Lewes. Until then, toodle pip.
Thank you.